Hello everyone. Have you ever been in a conversation where a woman asks you something so simple, so harmless on the surface, but hours later, you find yourself replaying it in your mind, wondering, wait, was she flirting with me? It's subtle. It's not the obvious wink or the playful touch. It's not the grand gestures you see in movies. No, this is something far more intriguing, far more sophisticated. It's the kind of flirting that slips under your radar, especially if you've reached a point in life where you've stopped expecting it. Because here's the truth, as men get older, they often miss these cues, not because they aren't attractive anymore, not because women have stopped noticing them, but because life, with all its responsibilities, routines, and self-doubts, has dulled their ability to read the music beneath the words. And women are masters at this game. They ask certain questions not for information, but for connection, to test the waters, to invite you in, without ever saying so directly. Today, I want to open your eyes to these moments. I want you to recognize the invitation when it's offered. Because once you do, your conversations, your connections, will never be the same again. Have you ever been in a conversation where a woman asks you something so simple, so harmless on the surface, but hours later, you find yourself replaying it in your mind, wondering, wait, was she flirting with me? It's subtle. It's not the obvious wink or the playful touch. It's not the grand gestures you see in movies. No, this is something far more intriguing, far more sophisticated. It's the kind of flirting that slips under your radar, especially if you've reached a point in life where you've stopped expecting it. Because here's the truth, as men get older, they often miss these cues, not because they aren't attractive anymore, not because women have stopped noticing them, but because life, with all its responsibilities, routines, and self-doubts, has dulled their ability to read the music beneath the words. And women are masters at this game. They ask certain questions not for information but for connection, to test the waters, to invite you in, without ever saying so directly. I want to begin by asking you something. When was the last time a woman asked you about your past? Not just, where did you grow up, but something more intimate. What were you like when you were younger? Or perhaps, how did you meet your first love? You might think she's just curious, making conversation. But there's more beneath the surface. When a woman asks about your past in that way, she's not looking for a factual answer. She's listening for your energy when you tell your story. She's watching your eyes light up when you speak of a time when you were wild, passionate, unfiltered. She's searching for the man you used to be and wondering if that man still lives inside you. Older men often miss this because they answer factually. Oh, I grew up here, worked there, dated someone for a while. The end. They don't realize that in that moment, she's not interviewing them for a resume. She's trying to open a door. She wants you to step through it and bring her into a piece of your world that isn't about work, bills, or responsibilities. Here's another one. What do you do for fun? At first glance, it's the most boring, predictable question in the book. But listen to me. When a woman asks this, she's not asking for a list of hobbies. She's asking if you have a liveness, if you have something in your life that excites you, makes you curious, makes you feel like a boy again. Too many older men respond with, oh, I don't have much time for fun these days, or just the usual watch some TV, and I understand, life can be demanding. But when you answer that way, you're unknowingly telling her that your life has no spark. And if your life has no spark, why would she feel drawn to it? When she asks what you do for fun, she's offering you a chance to show your vitality, to let her see that there is more to you than your obligations. Maybe you love cooking, and when you talk about your signature dish, you describe it in a way that makes her taste it in her imagination. Maybe you play guitar, not well enough to impress a crowd, but well enough to make her smile when you strum a tune after dinner. That's what she's searching for, a glimpse of your soul, your joy. And here's the thing, these questions are almost never direct admissions of attraction. They are safe for her. They allow her to flirt without risk, to gauge your response without putting herself in a vulnerable position. If you respond with warmth, with curiosity about her as well, the conversation can deepen. If you respond flatly, she can retreat without embarrassment. I've worked with many men who tell me, Esther, I didn't think she was interested. She never said anything obvious. And I tell them, attraction after 30 rarely announces itself with a neon sign. It is hidden in the fabric of conversation, in the pauses, in the way she leans in when you speak. And one of the most common places it hides is in the question she chooses to ask you. Another one you might recognize is, do you still talk to your ex? Now, some men hear this and immediately become defensive. But step back and see the nuance. She's not always fishing for gossip. Often she's trying to find out if you are emotionally available, if you have space in your heart for someone new, if your past is still sitting at the table with you in the present. And the way you answer matters deeply. If you talk about your ex with bitterness, you reveal that you are still entangled emotionally. If you speak with kindness and neutrality, you show that you have processed your past and moved forward. That, my friends, is deeply attractive. Emotional maturity is one of the most powerful aphrodisiacs for a woman over 30. Let me give you a small truth that most men overlook. Women rarely flirt for no reason. If she's asking these deeper, more personal questions, it's because something about you has already caught her attention. Maybe it's the way you carry yourself. Maybe it's your voice, your humor, your presence. But she has noticed you. And now she's sending out signals to see if the attraction might be mutual. The tragedy is that many older men are so focused on whether they're still attractive that they miss the fact that they already are. They don't realize the game is already on. They don't pick up the ball and play. So the next time a woman asks you about your past, your passions, or your emotional life, I want you to pause. Breathe. Instead of answering mechanically, tell her a story. Invite her into a memory. Share something that lets her feel your humanity. Because when you do that, you are not just answering a question. You are creating connection. And connection, that is where attraction lives. When we start paying attention to the subtlety in a woman's questions, we begin to realize just how much is communicated without a single declaration of intent. There's one question in particular that I've seen trip up so many men, and it's this: so what's your type? On the surface, it's playful, maybe even innocent, the kind of thing people ask out of curiosity. But underneath, it's a test wrapped in velvet. When a woman asks you about your type, she's not always asking for a list of physical traits. What she's truly probing for is whether she might fit into the vision you have for intimacy. She wants to see if you will describe qualities she either embodies or aspires to. And here's the delicate part: if you respond in a way that is too rigid or too superficial, you risk shutting the door without even realizing it. Men often answer with something like, "Oh, I like blondes," or "I like women who are athletic." That might be true, but think about the message it sends. You've just reduced your criteria to something she can't change in the next 5 minutes, or ever. She either fits or she doesn't. End of story. But when you respond with something richer, "I like someone who's curious about the world, someone who laughs easily, someone who can talk about dreams and fears in the same conversation," you are doing something magical. You are inviting her to imagine herself in that role. You are speaking to qualities that connect rather than exclude. This is where many older men have an advantage, if only they'd realize it. With age often comes a deeper understanding of what actually matters in a relationship. You know that the shine of physical beauty fades if there's no substance beneath it. You've learned that shared values, humor, and kindness outlast fleeting attraction. So, when she asks what your type is, you can answer from that wisdom, and in doing so, you signal to her that you are a man of depth. Another question that is far more loaded than it seems is, where do you see yourself in a few years? This is not a job interview, and yet many men treat it like one. They rattle off something about work, retirement plans, maybe travel, but often they miss the heart of the question. When she asks you this, she's not just mapping out your career trajectory, she's assessing your capacity for vision. Do you have a sense of where you're headed? Do you live intentionally, or are you drifting? And here's the subtle seduction in it. She's also wondering if she could picture herself in that future with you. If your answer paints a life that is rich, textured, and emotionally alive, you invite her into a possibility. If you describe a future that is lonely, small, or passionless, she will instinctively feel less drawn in. This doesn't mean you have to have every detail figured out. In fact, there's something incredibly attractive about a man who can admit he's still exploring, but does so with excitement rather than resignation. I'm not sure exactly where I'll be, but I know I want to be learning something new, living somewhere that inspires me, and surrounded by people who matter. That kind of answer creates a sense of adventure, of movement. Then there's one of my personal favorites: do you always? This might sound vague, but you'll recognize it when you hear it. She might say, "Do you always dress like this?" Or, "Do you always order the same thing?" Or, "Do you always talk this way?" And while it can sound teasing, it's actually a subtle form of flirtation. Why? Because "do you always" implies she's paying close attention. It shows she has noticed a pattern in you, and she's curious enough to comment on it. The question is often laced with an invitation for you to play along, to flirt back, to break the pattern in a way that draws her in. For example, if she says, "Do you always dress like this?" you could respond flatly with, "Yes, I do." Or you could lean in slightly, smile, and say, "Only when I'm trying to impress someone." The first answer closes the loop. The second answer opens it wide. It leaves her wondering if that someone might be her. These small moments are where attraction is either nurtured or neglected, and I see older men neglect them far too often, simply because they've grown out of practice. They've been in relationships where flirting no longer felt necessary, or they've been single long enough that they assume these interactions aren't happening at all. But here's the truth: if a woman is engaging with you, if she's asking these kinds of questions, she's already creating a playful space. Your role is to step into it with confidence, not hesitation. Confidence in this context doesn't mean bravado or arrogance. It's not about trying to impress her with grand gestures or clever lines. It's about being present enough to notice the opening and relaxed enough to step into it without fear. Let's talk about presence for a moment, because it's the quiet force behind all of this. Presence means you are not so focused on what you will say next that you miss what's happening now. You are not so trapped in self-consciousness that you can't pick up on her tone, her expression, the rhythm of her breathing. When she asks, "What's your type?" or "Where do you see yourself?" or "Do you always?" Presence allows you to hear not just the words, but the intention. And intention is the heartbeat of attraction. Presence also means you reflect her curiosity back to her. If she asks what you do for fun, ask her the same. But don't let it be a checklist question. Listen and then build on it. If she says she loves hiking, you might say, "What's your favorite trail?" Or, "When was the last time you hiked somewhere that took your breath away?" These follow-up questions are where real connection blooms. Because here's what women over 30, and especially over 40, crave. They crave being seen. Not just noticed for their appearance, but seen for who they are, for what lights them up. And when you show her that you are paying attention, that you are not rushing through the conversation like it's a formality, you set yourself apart from almost every other man she's spoken to that week. And let's not forget, flirting at its best is a dance. It's not about making a move. It's about moving together. It's about creating a shared moment that feels alive, playful, a little unpredictable. The questions she asks are often her way of taking the first step in that dance. She's testing whether you will follow her lead, add your own steps, and keep the rhythm going. Older men have an advantage here too, because they've lived long enough to know that the dance is the point. It's not about racing to the end, to the kiss, to the bedroom. It's about enjoying the exchange, savoring the tension, letting things unfold in their own time. When you recognize the subtlety in her questions, you give yourself the opportunity to do exactly that, to enjoy the dance, to make her feel both safe and thrilled. To remind her that attraction is ageless when you know how to nurture it. The most powerful flirtation often hides in the questions that seem to touch something tender in you. These are not playful, teasing questions. They are the ones that make you pause for just a fraction of a second before you answer, because they reach into the part of you that isn't always on display. One of these is, what's something you've always wanted to do, but haven't yet? On the surface, this might feel like a casual curiosity. But in truth, it's an invitation for you to reveal a dream. And here's the thing, when you reveal a dream, you reveal your longing. Longing is deeply attractive. It shows her you are still in motion, still hungry for life. It tells her that you haven't settled into resignation, that there is a part of you that wants more, not just in the material sense, but in experiences, in depth, in connection. When you answer this question with honesty, without turning it into a joke or brushing it off, you give her a glimpse of the man beneath the armor. If you say, "I've always wanted to learn to dance," she can imagine dancing with you. If you say, "I've always wanted to live by the sea," she can picture herself there with you, feeling the salt on her skin. Older men sometimes shy away from sharing dreams because they feel it makes them vulnerable. And yes, it does, but that vulnerability is magnetic when it's paired with self-assurance. It says, "I know who I am, and I'm not afraid to let you see my desires." Another question that carries far more weight than most realize is, who do you talk to when you're going through something difficult? Now, you might think this is about relationships with friends or family, but beneath that, she's really asking, do you let people in? Do you trust? Do you know how to receive care? For many women, the idea of being with a man who shuts down emotionally is exhausting. They don't want to have to pry you open with a crowbar. They want to know that when life hits you hard, you can let someone stand beside you in it. When you answer this question in a way that shows you have support and that you value it, you signal emotional availability. And that, for a woman over 30, is often more alluring than a six-pack or a sports car. Here's another one that can take you by surprise. What was your childhood like? It's such a gentle, almost innocent question. But listen, she's not asking for a Wikipedia summary of your early years. She's listening for the shaping forces in your life. She's trying to understand the boy you were, because the boy you were still lives inside the man you are. If you grew up in a loving home, she'll see the roots of your warmth. If you grew up with struggle, she'll see the resilience you've built. The point is not to impress her with a perfect story. It's to let her see the realness, the humanity, because in that realness, connection flourishes. And then there's the deceptively light. What makes you happy? Most men answer this too quickly. Good food, good company, a nice drink. But she's asking for something deeper. She's trying to see if your happiness is self-generated or if it depends entirely on external validation. If you can speak about the things that bring you joy from the inside out, moments of gratitude, simple pleasures, pursuits that make you lose track of time, you show her that you are grounded, that you know how to be content, and that you're not looking for someone to fill an empty space in your soul. Here's the thread connecting all these questions. She is looking for a way in, not a way to exploit you, but a way to feel close to you. And closeness is what turns a conversation into a spark, and a spark into a flame. When you answer with presence, with just enough vulnerability to make the moment feel alive, you create a bridge. And that bridge is where the flirtation becomes more than playful. It becomes intimate. But there's a danger here too. If you are not paying attention, you might respond in ways that shut down the connection without realizing it. If she asks what makes you happy and you give a short, dismissive answer, she'll feel the door closing. If she asks about your childhood and you deflect with humor to avoid discomfort, she'll sense the walls. Women are intuitive about these things. They don't need you to pour your heart out in one sitting. In fact, too much too soon can feel overwhelming. But they do need to feel that you are willing to open, that you are not locked away behind years of self-protection. Let me tell you something important. The older you get, the more valuable this quality becomes. In your 20s, you could rely on energy, novelty, and physical attraction to carry you. In your 40s, 50s, and beyond, your value comes from something richer. Your ability to make someone feel understood, seen, and emotionally safe while still being playful, passionate, and alive. So when these deeper questions arise, take a breath before you answer. Notice the way she's looking at you. Hear the music behind the words. And then give her a piece of the truth, not all of it, just enough to make her lean in and want more, because that's the secret. Attraction thrives on curiosity. If you reveal just enough of yourself while leaving space for her to keep exploring, you create an ongoing desire. It's not about giving her every answer. It's about making the conversation a living thing, one that grows each time you speak. The men who understand this never run out of things to talk about with a woman they're interested in. They don't rely on tricks or lines because they know that the most powerful seduction is simply to be deeply, unmistakably present in the moment with her. Up until now, we've been exploring the questions women ask when they're quietly, sometimes unknowingly, flirting with you. We've looked at the surface, at what's underneath, and at why so many men miss it entirely. But knowing what these questions mean is only half the game. The real magic lies in how you respond, because your response is where you turn a spark into something alive, or let it die without ever realizing what could have been. Think of it like this. Her question is a door she's leaving slightly open. You can walk past it, pretending you didn't notice, or you can step through it and discover what's inside. The first principle of responding is this: don't answer like you're being interrogated. Too many men, when asked something intimate or playful, give short, efficient answers as if they're filling out a form. What do you do for fun? I work out. What makes you happy? Family. What's your type? Someone nice. The problem isn't that these answers are wrong. It's that they leave no space for her imagination. They don't invite her in. They don't give her anything to hold on to. Instead, when she asks what you do for fun, think of an answer that reveals a piece of your personality and invites her to join you in it. I love cooking, especially on Sundays. Music on, glass of wine, something slow on the stove. There's something about the rhythm of it that makes me happy. Now, instead of a flat answer, you've painted an image. She can almost smell the food, hear the music, feel the warmth of the kitchen. You've given her a place to step into your world and maybe even imagine herself there. The second principle is play with the question without dodging it. If she asks, do you always dress like this? You could respond directly, but you could also add a touch of curiosity. Do you like it? This flips the focus onto her, creating a playful back and forth. Playfulness is powerful because it changes the tone from Q&A to connection. It says, we're not just exchanging information, we're creating a moment together. But here's where older men sometimes get it wrong. They confuse playfulness with teasing that crosses into criticism. If she says, do you always order the same drink? And you reply, well, at least I'm consistent. Unlike you, you risk making it defensive or sharp. Instead, keep it light, keep it warm. Only when I'm trying to seem mysterious. The third principle, let your tone carry as much meaning as your words. Esther Perel often talks about the erotic charge in voice, in pauses, in the way you look at someone. If you're speaking about something that excites you, let that excitement be heard. If you're sharing a memory, slow down enough for her to feel it with you. A man who answers with his whole presence, voice expression, body language, draws her in far more than one who delivers perfect words with no feeling. And here's something crucial. When a woman asks a question that touches a tender part of you, don't rush to fill the silence. A moment's pause before you answer can be more seductive than the answer itself. That pause tells her you are considering her question, not just reacting automatically. It creates tension, the good kind. The fourth principle, mirror her curiosity back to her, but with depth. If she asks what your type is, ask about hers, but in a way that opens her up. I'm curious, do you think your type has changed over the years? Now, you're not just swapping preferences, you're exploring how attraction evolves, which can lead to far richer conversations. When you mirror, you create symmetry, the sense that you are both engaged in discovering each other, and symmetry is deeply bonding. Now let's talk about one of the most under-used tools in flirting after 30, storytelling. If she asks about your childhood, don't just give a summary. Tell her about the summer you and your friends built a treehouse that collapsed halfway through, and how you laughed so hard you forgot to be disappointed. If she asks what you've always wanted to do, share the moment you first realized you wanted it. Bring her into the scene. Let her feel it. Storytelling works because it bypasses logic and goes straight to emotion. And attraction at its core is an emotional experience. But here's the beautiful thing. When you tell a story well, you're not just answering her question. You're showing her how it feels to be with you. The rhythm of your voice, the glint in your eye, the way you relive the memory, these are all invitations. Finally, the fifth principle: leave space for more. You don't have to reveal everything at once. In fact, it's better if you don't. If she asks about your happiest memory, you can share one and then hint at another. But that's only one story. There's another I'll tell you sometime. That sometime becomes a reason for the connection to continue. It creates an unfinished thread, and our minds are wired to want to complete what is unfinished. Remember, the goal here isn't to impress her with perfect answers. The goal is to create a shared space where attraction can grow naturally. The questions she asks are seeds. Your responses are the soil, the sunlight, the water. Some will grow into playful banter. Others will grow into moments of intimacy. But they will only grow if you tend to them with presence and openness. Because at the end of the day, she's not going to remember the exact words you said. She's going to remember how she felt when she was with you. Did she feel seen? Did she feel drawn in? Did she feel curious to know more? If the answer is yes, then you've done more than just respond to her flirtation. You've made her want to keep dancing with you. By now, you can see that the way women flirt with you, especially as you get older, is rarely about overt moves or obvious signals. It's about the questions they choose, the way they invite you to reveal yourself, the subtle dance of curiosity and response. But there's something even more important than recognizing these moments and responding well in the moment. It's learning how to sustain them. Because fleeting attraction is easy. Anyone can spark a connection for 5 minutes. What's rare and deeply desirable is the man who can keep that energy alive long after the first exchange. Sustaining attraction begins with one thing: consistency of presence. If you only show your charm, your attentiveness, your curiosity in those early conversations, you send the message that it's an act. Women, especially women over 30, are exquisitely tuned into this. They've had enough experiences to know the difference between a man who is briefly performing interest and a man who lives in that space naturally. Presence doesn't mean constant attention or endless texting. It means that when you are with her, whether that's a conversation in person, on the phone, or even a short exchange over messages, you're fully there. You're not half listening while scrolling, not glancing at the door, not already thinking about the next thing you'll say. Because here's the truth: one deeply present moment is worth more than hours of distracted interaction. The second key is variety in your connection. Attraction fades when every interaction feels the same. If you always respond in predictable ways, if the rhythm never changes, the spark dulls. Think of it like music. It's not the steady beat that excites us. It's the changes, the crescendos, the pauses, the unexpected notes. In conversation, this means mixing playfulness with depth, humor with sincerity. One day you might share a childhood story that makes her laugh. Another, you might talk about something you're learning or a challenge you've faced. This variety keeps her curiosity alive, and curiosity is the oxygen of attraction. The third element is shared creation. Relationships, whether they're just beginning or years in, thrive when you're not just exchanging information, but building something together. This could be as small as an ongoing inside joke, a series of to-be-continued stories, or a plan to explore something new together. Remember the principle from part 4, leaving threads unfinished, so there's always a reason to come back to them. This works beautifully when it's mutual. She tells you about a dream trip, you tell her you've never tried the food from that place, and suddenly you're planning to find the best restaurant in town that serves it. These are not grand gestures. They are shared investments in connection. The fourth way to sustain attraction is perhaps the most counterintuitive: is space. In our culture, we often think closeness comes from constant contact, but real desire needs space. It needs the tension of not always knowing what the other person is doing or thinking. It needs a little mystery. This doesn't mean playing games or withholding. It means you allow both of you to keep parts of your life that are yours alone. You have your passions, your friends, your quiet rituals, and so does she. This independence is magnetic because it tells her you're with her by choice, not by dependence. The older you get, the more this matters. A woman who has built her own life doesn't want to give it up to become someone's entire world. She wants to weave it together with someone who also has their own world. And finally, the fifth, and perhaps most essential, element in sustaining attraction: ongoing discovery. The questions she asks at the beginning, the flirtatious, the playful, the intimate, are just the start. If you want the connection to stay alive, you have to keep asking too. Not interrogation, but exploration. Ask about her first job, about the moment she realized she'd outgrown it, about the little things that make her feel most herself, about the places she feels at home. And when she answers, listen, not for your turn to speak, but for the threads you can follow later. That story she told about camping as a teenager, ask her next week what the stars looked like that night. That dream she mentioned about starting something new, check in to see how it's going. This is how intimacy grows, not in grand cinematic moments, but in the accumulation of small remembered details. Because at the heart of it all, the reason women flirt with you through these questions is simple. They want to see if you are paying attention. They want to know if you see them, not just a role they play or an image they present. And when you show them, not just once, but over and over, that you do see them, you become unforgettable. Flirtation, in the way we've been talking about it, isn't just about seduction. It's about creating a space where two people can be curious about each other without pressure, where the conversation can move between light and deep, where both feel both safe and alive. And the beauty of this for you as a man over 30 is that you already have the ingredients. You've lived, you've loved, you've lost, you've rebuilt. You have stories, lessons, and dreams. All you need to do is bring them to the surface, let them breathe in your conversations, and notice when a woman is inviting you to share them. So the next time you're talking with a woman and she asks you something that seems simple or random or even slightly odd, pause, look at her, hear not just the words, but the possibility behind them, and then answer in a way that lets her see the man you are and the man you're still becoming. Because that's the real seduction, not just showing her who you've been, but inviting her to discover who you are yet to be. And that, my friends, is how older men stop missing the moments that could change everything.